All right, we're live. Perfect. So can you guys remember what we ended with last time? Or do we should probably do a little bit of a recap, eh?
Yeah, I mean, do you mean last time, like last week, or last time I was here?
Last time you were here, because that was the
This
last meeting.
thing, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we just started with a general overview of the, let's say, the existing core parts of Async API. And then we wanted to prioritize a little bit. And the diagram was the result, which is mostly like a dependency graph, because we noticed that the easiest way to structure is basically like have the most important thing on the top, and then a lot of depending stuff below that. And this was our way to say which parts might be a little bit more important than other parts.
Yep. I think you nailed it. Do you have anything to add to it?
No, I was not in the last meeting.
No,
I read this.
the last one you attended.
No.
Oh yeah, you didn't attend this one. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Did you have anything to add to this?
No, I read the issue and I understood what you guys talked. Also watched the video as well. And yeah.
All right. Yeah, so last time we ended with us having to deep dive into each of these with like what do we see each of these tools do? Like, what's the vision for each of these tools? What does they achieve? That was basically where we left off, and where I suggest that we pick up today. Is there anything else you guys want to discuss beforehand, or do we just want to jump straight into it?
Let's jump straight into it.
Yeah.
All right. So I'm just gonna suggest an approach. Let me know how this sounds to you. Can I do this? No. Okay. So I will suggest that we use our newly formed, whatever this is called. I can't remember the name, Kanban board. And we use this to basically both start a discussion and like figure out what we're doing and take action for the next ones as well. So like everything is kept within basically this projects page. So everyone else can also discuss and add stuff to it as we go. I'm not sure whether this how does that sound?
Yeah.
I want to see if I can. Let me share this one. Can you all see it?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. Can we all add comments to it or no? I don't think we can we?
I don't see an option to comment.
I can edit it.
You commented?
Yeah. I can edit it. So I just wrote if you refresh.
Yeah, you can edit it, but I wanted to have a issue, I think. All right, so let me convert it to an issue.
Oh.
And then
Where will it go? So I think okay.
because we don't have a repository for it. So
So it goes to the community repo.
yeah.
Maybe we use our teams, right? We can have comments there, I guess.
Yeah, so the idea is I want to do a brainstorm basically. So we each of us gets each of us gets like, let's say we take 5 minutes per tool. We write down what we think is the vision for each of those tools. And then we use 5 or 10 minutes to discuss what we wrote. And then basically just keep going until we are done with all the tools. And then the other folks in the group can do the same on their own pace whenever they are available.
Yeah.
For the next meeting.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Okay.
Lawrence?
So we write for JSON schema, parser, code first, integration into existing frameworks and code generators. All these.
Yes, exactly. So let me add the description. How does that sound, Lawrence?
Sounds good. So everyone writes down what he thinks is the ideal the ideal end state for each tool. Is that what you mean?
Yeah.
Okay.
So like a vision, or it can also be what that specific tool needs to solve, or what we are interested in, each of us, that the tool solves.
Okay.
So that and then we take all of that feedback next meeting. Once we have listed all of these things, and then find what we, across all of us, find most, like what to focus on basically. Like what are the,
sounds good.
Yeah. So let's start with, so I think each of us here can create a comment, and then we edit that comment to include all of the tools. But we start off with just the JSON schema files. And then we discuss that, then we edit the comment, add the next one, and so forth. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So we basically end up with 3 comments where each of us have written about each of those tools, and then I create a recap in like for the 4th comment with what we discussed here today. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
All right. Let's set a timer, 5 minutes. So 20 past for the first one.
Okay.
We should have like this waiting music that you have in lobbyists. All right, it is time. Do you need more time? Or you're good?
I'm good.
Civic?
Yeah, sure.
Who wants to go first?
I can go first. Should I post the comment? Yeah, right.
Yeah, just post a comment now.
Okay. Okay. So yeah, to be honest, I don't use JSON schemas too much right now, but the three things that come to my mind is, first of all, source of truth. I think Pavel mentioned this 2 weeks ago. Yeah, I think this is probably the most prominent use case for JSON schemas, just to have like one source of truth written in code that everyone can use to also validate their documentation. So I also added this to the second point of good IDE support. I guess this is what most people use it for, right? If they want to write the specifications in the IDE, I think JSON schemas can be used for auto-completion and validation. So if this works, I think we already are in a good state. And the third point from my view is, I'm not even sure if this is like a use case of it, but I could imagine that with JSON schemas, we could also support distributed documentation better. So have a way to actually reuse specific components, and for this they have to be well defined, and we also need to support having references and having a good mechanism for references. Yeah, so this is basically what I can think of for JSON schemas.
I like it. Civic?
Yeah. So I was thinking like have similar validating tools across different languages, like which produce almost same results or like as little difference as possible. And also the spec we have right now, like JSON schema, we validate bindings for our the spec that we have that validates binding, and also the tools support bindings instead of just passing it away inside like the spec. Yeah, those two things.
Nice. I like it. So yeah, my single vision for that tool is basically it becomes the source of truth, the same way that you guys said. There is, however, so it's basically no matter what the specification says, what's valid through the JSON schema files is what's valid, basically. And of course, those two has to sync with each other, but the single source of truth has to come from the JSON schema files. There is, however, the exception that there is some things that JSON schemas simply can't handle. For example, we have examples fields. You wouldn't be able to, for example, say that the examples must match payload type, for example. So when you define the specific payload of a message and you define examples, having those two things match up is technically a validation problem, but it's not something that JSON schema can detect, which means that there is exceptions to the rule of what JSON schema can, like to the extent that it can be the single source of truth. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah, some of the features that I see is that you can validate partial async API documents, because that references is such a huge thing. Having to like only validate message object, for example, that is a separate file, is important. That these JSON schema files can be used across all programming languages, like no matter basically what you wrote, Suvik, that they can be used across all of the languages. Same with validate bindings. And then I also added can validate common extensions. There is a little bit in the future regarding that certain extensions might become standard. So it might include that as well. But yeah, that's mine. Any questions?
Do we already have some kinds of tests for schemas? Or how does it work?
What do you mean?
I mean, if we define the schema somewhere, are there maybe also some examples that we, for example, that we consider valid and then check against the schema to have some sort of test to make sure that the schema is actually correct? Or as expected?
You mean this one up here? Like this examples must match payload type, or?
I don't mean inside the specification where you say, okay, this is the message, the messages of this type. I mean, for async API as a general, we also have JSON schemas, right? And then, for example, we could say, okay, this is one example JSON schema for some API, and then just check if this matches against the schema that we defined. Maybe we already have it, and actually never checked the GitHub repo for this.
So what I understand is, do we have async API documents as examples that we can use to test the JSON schema files as they complete, like, yeah, we have a few.
Okay.
We actually have it in the spec repo itself. So under the spec, there is this here that has a bunch of different ones. That is fully like valid async API documents.
Okay, and do we actually run some tests? Like if we merge a new version? Because this would be nice.
Yeah, that's true. But it's a good point. But I think we should keep it to the implementation detail phase, like when we finally go into what is missing, basically. Good points. Suvik, did you have anything?
No.
All right. Let's so basically what I'm hearing is we are aligned on what the JSON schema files is supposed to be between the three of us. We have some extra features, such as, for example, this is a good one as well, like auto completion and valid auto completion specifically is one that we haven't talked about because, well, EDE supports these JSON schema files that can then also complete stuff on VS Code and whatever other IDEs that you use, right? So that's a good one, but that also requires that you have good descriptions, probably good examples that is written inside the JSON schema document. So when you have that auto completion feature, it also shows you a description of what it is instead of it's just being blank, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Want to jump to the next one? All right. Just edit your issue, basically. I think that's the easiest. and we go to 35 or 36. All right. You folks done? Or you want a little bit more?
I'm done.
Yeah, I'm going to.
All right. Lorenz, do you want to start again?
Sure. So for parsers, I would start with the most basic stuff, which is serialize and deserialize two most common languages. So just if you want, let's say you have already some async API document and you want to use it in your language of choice, should be a way to convert this JSON document to objects, structs, whatever the language supports, and the other way around. Then you also need some idiomatic builders. So what feels most natural to language, maybe a DSL, maybe a Java object builder, whatever. And then the last one, I think it's also important to have some sort of JSON schema integration in this whole process, because I think in most use cases, you don't actually want to build JSON schemas for your objects. So it would be nice if this parser mechanism already has a way to automatically convert objects to JSON schema and the other way around. The other way around, maybe not really, but at least if you have some code and you want to build some documentation and you have objects in your language, maybe it's nice to already include this JSON schema stuff in the parsing mechanism.
I don't think I followed that one. Do you mind clarifying a bit?
Yeah, so let's say you work in Java and you want to serialize your JSON, your async API documentation. You want to build it in code, right? Then you have the DSL or some builder where you say, those are my servers, those are my channels. And then you want to say, okay, in this channel, we actually publish a message. And this goes back to the code first approach, right? Where you already have code and you want to build something. And then you don't want to manually specify the JSON schema, but you just want to say, this is the class of the message, generate the JSON schema for this. So I'm not sure if it's already out of scope for the parser, but for me, it's basically connected.
Just I don't think I fully understand that part right there. So you mean like you would want to be able to tag a class and say use this as the message payload and
Yeah, you don't
generate
have to,
JSON schema from it, or
yeah, you don't have to tag it, but you can maybe just give the parser the class. In Java, this is possible because you have all this meta information of a class to a method that builds your document basically and say generated from this class, the JSON schema.
huh? Do you have an example like that you can quickly show, or?
Yes.
Or you can add it to the issue later if you want.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's easy, I think.
Yeah, okay, no worries. Yeah, because I don't think I fully understand that specific part. Because it also might be slightly over in the code first tool, but it might also be part of a builder more than a parser. It kind of, I don't know, I can't figure that one out.
It's like generating JSON schema from code. Like you have classes and you generate spec from that.
Yes, that's the idea. But I mean, we can also put it under the code first tool.
We can take it up. Let's see. Anything else you wanted to add?
No, that's it.
Any questions, Zoe?
Oh, no.
All right, go for it, Zoe.
Okay, so I kind of just wrote all the functions I'm implementing in the Go parser. So just basically that's what I wrote. So uh, so first it loads the SyncAPI documents from any sources, right? Like file URL or any supported data structure of any language. And we validate spec. It is able to validate the spec and also like have meaningful and helpful error messages if the spec isn't valid. So provide an interface to access one-to-one representative data in a sync API file that we validate, and provide like helpful functions to.
Can you
Yeah.
clarify that one? This one.
So it's basically access all the data in the spec in the sync API file, like one-to-one, like you can access everything as it is, like how the spec is formatted, and then helpful functions to access parts of the spec. Like if you want only the channels, only a certain channel, you can have like helpful functions to get those things. And resolve references while parsing. So like handle references. And this support circular referencing. And also like each and every parsers have like a minimum tests like for like a standard of features are set like every parser follows, so that like they have the basic functionality down. Yeah,
it's a good one. Any questions, Lauren?
So for resolve references while parsing, yeah, let's say you have a document where you, I don't know, you have a channel and the messages say this is the reference, and then below you say in the components what the messages actually look like. When you pass this document into memory, would you actually just remove the reference itself and paste it in line?
well, so like there's two ways of doing this. So like one is like you paste that code from a different file and bring it to your this file where the reference is, or you bring that in the components and then reference to your local component instead of that file, or you can also like keep it in memory while the parser is running.
I think what Lorenz asked about was when you parse an async, and correct me if I'm wrong, Lorenz, when you parse an async API document and that one contains references, do you actually so once you say async API dot channels dot user sign up, if that channel is a reference, would you be able to say dot address, or would you have to be able to say dot reference and then go through the reference?
Oh.
Is that what you mean, Lawrence, or is that too far from it?
Yeah, I mean, do we actually want to generate one-to-one representation between document and language? Because if we do that, we actually can't resolve the references because it's part of the document, right? If you want to actually match what you have in the document to memory, then you would have to keep the references as they are. If you want to keep in the scope of only parsing, I think it's super useful and interesting. But I'm not sure if everyone that just wants a parser also wants the references to be resolved.
It's a good question.
Well, I think the current parser in Java, which is in TypeScript, actually resolves the references, right?
It does,
we load the. Yeah.
But that doesn't mean it's the right approach.
Okay.
It's a good question.
Yeah.
And I actually see both reasons why it might be both, or just maybe one of them. It can even be a feature flag or an option.
Yeah. Yeah, I think an option would be nice.
Yeah. because I can see a reason why you want to know whether the current object that you're currently iterating through is a reference to something, like actually located somewhere else, and keeping that information so you can so like programmatically you can check whether it's a reference, where that reference is, and all of these things. And you can also access the data from that reference directly if that's what you need. So I guess that's all depends on use case. That one. Anything else? All right. So I wrote kind of a vision or proposed a vision for the parser. So it basically, no matter which language that you build a tool in, you should have the same experience.
Yeah.
You should be able to have similar functionalities across those parser implementations. So whenever you build the tools that interact with async API documents, it doesn't matter which language you use. It's the same user experience. That's basically my vision for the parser. So some of those features is that it can handle all references, also including those that are in private registries, something that require credentials, local files, even handling non-JSON YAML references. For example, in the future, there might be a possibility that you can reference protobuf files directly. So parsers should be able to handle those types of references. It should be able to enable me to iterate over an async API document. Like I should be able to fetch any information in this async API document, regardless of where it is. I'm gonna get back to this one. Should be able to validate bindings. Should be able to validate custom extensions. So that means that users, for example, can, if they use specific extensions, they can add a JSON schema file that we can validate those against, for example. It should be able to handle custom schema formats. For example, let's say that you have a proprietary schema format, my protobuf instead of protobuf, unofficial one. And I want to be able to validate that and interact with those schemas. I should be able to do that. Has great documentation, so the user knows exactly where to look for the information. Like it's not a black box. It should be fairly straightforward to use these parsers. And yeah, it can be used across multiple languages with the same level of quality. And then this one is a bit tricky. So up until now, we mainly talked about having a one-to-one representation of async API. In a production level environment, it's more you don't really care about what async API version, maybe you don't. You don't really care about which async API version the document is if you want to just fetch the version of the async API document, of that application. You don't care whether it's under info.version or whether it's under .metainfo.info.version. The information lies just differently in different versions of async API. So if we were able to create some kind of interface that doesn't care about what async API version the document is, that would be pretty nice. But yeah, that's what I have. Questions?
Can you maybe give an example for handling custom schema formats? So You mean if someone actually does not publish messages in JSON format, right? This would be different schema format. What do you mean?
So it's basically, let me see if it works. Technically, I can do this. Or at least I should be able to. Actually, don't know if I'm. Nice. Okay, it's not supported in Studio. Technically, we don't enforce what schema formats are allowed here. I could have proprietary schema formats. I could have, it might be a new schema format even. It can be a new JSON schema version. It can be a new protobuf version, or it can be an outlier to one of them. So that means that a parser should be able to handle these cases here, because these are validates, even though that Studio doesn't really, for some reason, doesn't allow it. But this is a valid async API document.
I think that's pretty hard to support in some languages, especially if you're statically typed and you also want your schema to be static or type safe when you build it. I'm not sure how you could implement this.
I don't think that you will. I don't think we would be able to, but this is implementation detail again. It's not really something that, but yeah. But there is, no, let's not get into it. It's just to say that this is, for example, something that's valid. So in some way or form, you have to be able to handle this in one way or another. Any other questions?
Maybe one more. You say every parser should also support JSON and YAML documents? Okay.
Because it's basically interchangeable in most cases. And I'm pretty sure that the spec itself says something about it being valid. Or are you talking about this? Or is it something else?
Yeah, no, I just mean, should every parser be able to basically read the YAML async API document?
I would say yes, because it's in the YAML standard that we use, it should be interchangeable between JSON and YAML. So you can, for example, in the parser, what we currently are doing is that we convert YAML to JSON, and then we continue on with the parsing. And that's it.
Yeah, I mean, shouldn't be too hard to do.
Yeah. And it's not, it's a fine line between what is really hard to do and what the users are using async API for. They don't care about whether it's hard for you to implement. It's more they just want the feature, right? So, but unfortunately, we also have to prioritize. So yeah, that's a good point. I don't think we're gonna make it to the next one. Do you folks think that we should just continue next time? Or do we want to set that we all come up with the rest of these and then we just discuss it next time? Or
I think that makes sense. So everyone has enough time to think about it and we can just discuss it. And also, I think the idea was also to aggregate it at some point, right, into one list.
Yes.
Yeah, I think this is something that we can do in the next meeting then.
All right, so we say that for the next meeting, we have on our own time, whenever we have time for it, we write down the vision for each of these. And then on next Tuesday, we discuss all of those things that we had in common and what the others have been writing in the meantime as well. And then might not be next time, but the time after that, we formulate a complete list of vision for what we want to achieve, right?
Yeah, sounds good to me.
Yeah.
All right. That sounds like a plan. Let's see if the others agree. We can also figure it out. But yeah, let's say that. All right. Well, this was productive. A lot. So yeah, thanks for joining and see you next time.
Thank you. Enjoy evening.
Yeah, you too.
Enjoy.
See ya.
Bye.